Hello all and welcome to this short video on EMI EMC. In this video, I'll tell you that what EMI EMC is all about. Why is it important to know about these EMI EMC, especially when you are dealing with electronic components in your vehicle designing or specifically your electronic component design. And then some of the test agencies which do these tests and the standard committees which set standard for measuring these radiations. So first we'll go through EMI. As the name suggests, it is electromagnetic interference. That is interference of the electromagnetic radiation. EMC means electromagnetic compatibility, which means how compatible your electronic product is in the presence of those electromagnetic radiations. Okay, it's as simple as that. But why is it important to know about these radiations? Well, so why is it important to know the EMI EMC, especially when you are working in developing some electronic devices or developing your car or engine or generator? So suppose this is your vehicle. When it moves around, there are many electromagnetic radiations which hits this car. Like there are many sources of these radiations, like from power line, from the tower lines, from the especially during clouding, when there is lightning, then there are electrostatic discharge that happens on the car. So how do you take care that your appliances do not get affected by all the radiations which falls on your car? You can't shield your car completely, right, from all these radiations. So you should know, you should have that confidence in your devices that they will still work very much fine in the presence of all the radiations which are around your car. So this is like dealing with the compatibility of your car in the presence of all the radiations which are around it. Similarly, what is the radiation which is getting emitted from your car? Suppose suppose your house is on main road and there are many vehicles which move around in front of your house. So suppose any such vehicle moves in front of your house which has not been tested for the EMI EMC, and hence it emits a lot of radiations, so much so that it affects the electronic appliances which are there in your house. Suppose you have television, you have cell phones, you have radios, so all those signals either can stop working or they malfunction because of the interference radiated from those vehicles. Therefore, it is very important from both perspectives. First is to protect your vehicles, functioning of your vehicle from the surrounding components, and also to protect the surrounding components from the emissions which your vehicle is giving. Electromagnetic radiation is a very generic term. There are a number of you must be knowing, or if you do not know, we'll see in further slides that based on the wavelength there are many kind of electromagnetic radiations. But out of those, we only deal with radio frequency radiations. Why? Because our electronic components work on those radio frequency range only. So if you see, this is one of the snaps I have taken from Britannica.com. So if you see, this is how our electromagnetic radiations have been divided based on the frequency and wavelength range. And this is where we have our radio waves, and this is the wave which is used by our television or the electronic components which are there in your automobile. All those things, they use the radio frequency range. Therefore we see only the effect of those radio wavelength on our appliances. All right, now that we have seen now what EMI-EMC test is and why is it important, sorry, what EMI-EMC is and why is it important. So how do we control this EMI EMC? Of course, there has to be some set of standards which should be followed, which should be common to the entire world or to specific countries. Otherwise, every individual manufacturer will have its own limit, and they will tend to have the lesser limit in their hand, because of course the more secure you make your component, the more cost goes into it and it makes it even more expensive. So therefore, to set a standard, a common standard for all the, like similar to how we have a standard for pollution, like in India we have this standard committee which sets a limit on the pollution, similar to how we have the limit for pollution in India and in other countries as well. Like you must have heard about CPCB standard for pollution we have, which sets these standards for Gen CPCB4, CPCB2, which defines the values of, the percentage of maximum your carbon dioxide, NOx, or hydrocarbon emissions should be. Similarly, BS standard, Bharat state standard for the automobile, and Euro standards for European countries. So, like we have these boards or societies for controlling the pollution coming out from a vehicle. Similarly, we have some standards which are there to control these EMI EMC radiations. So, what are those standards? There are, of course, multiple standards. There are multiple societies formed internationally and nationally to control these. But in this video, I'll mainly talk about the International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC, which is a global organization which deals mainly on standards for electrical and electronic components. Now, under this is a huge like society under which there is a subcommittee which is the ISPR, which specifically deals about on this radio interference. All right. So these are the committees basically which control or which set standards for the EMI EMC test, EMI EMC radiations. But what are those tests, or how do we take care of, that how much radiation should come out of a vehicle, or how much radiation our electronic component can endure? So these are some of the tests which we do on our electronic or in the entire vehicle or engines, to check those things. Like first one is the radiated or conducted immunity. As the name suggests, is it checks the immunity of your component or your vehicle in the presence of the radiated emissions or conducted emissions. Second is, so I'll just go through briefly through all these list of standards. I'll not go in detail. Next is the radiated emission. As the name suggests, again, it is basically how much emission your component or your EUT equipment under test is emitting the radiations. So these committees put some limits on how much maximum your EUT can emit the radiations. ESD is electrostatic discharge, which basically tests that how much your product can withstand the electrostatic discharge. So from where do these electrostatic discharges come from? They come from, like, this is one of the examples, when any human comes near the vehicle or near the engine, then at times it may happen that the cloth material that they have discharges has a lot of electrostatic charges on the surface, and it gets a discharge and creates a spark. So how much capable your appliances to withstand all, and that's a usual, you can say, scenario that happens. So your appliance should be capable of enduring these charges to certain extent. Surge immunity is basically a test method which is to check the ability of your EUT to withstand the electric charges that come when lightning falls on it. And this test majorly is done on the generators, because generators are a steady kind of application. So whenever the lightning discharge happens over your vehicles or regions, a lot of charges flows over your component in one go. So how much your vehicle can endure that, the test is done. If it is not able to endure, then those changes are done accordingly. Alternator noise test is based, as the name suggests, it is related to alternator, which is used in your engine or your generator or vehicle. Alternator means Alternator noise test is basically the effect of the sudden increase or decrease in the charges or in the voltages of your alternator, the effect of those on your components. So these are some of the list of standards. So maybe I'll just go through in briefly more detail on the values, to show you the values of the radiated immunity test and radiated emission test. So this is the table which I've taken from CISPR 25, which talks about the maximum values your component can have, your EUT can emit. So if you see, this column shows the application. This column shows the frequency range, and here you have the emitted radiations measured in terms of decibel or microvolt per meter. So suppose, like, if you these values are actually decided based on the agreement between the customer and the supplier. So suppose the list of applications that you want to deal is are these three. Then your vehicle under the frequency range of 41 to 88 should not emit radiations above these values. But these are, if you see, these are like divided class wise, class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the more you can say that, like, class 1 has, if you see one particular case of TVB and I, then if you see class 1, the peak value for emission is 52, whereas for class 5 the peak value for the emission is 28. So it depends on what deal has happened between the customer and the supplier, and also it depends on regional compliance, that which class should be followed, and your duty is designed accordingly. Next is example of radiated immunity. How do you test how much your vehicle maximum can emit maximum radiation? So if you see one particular case that in the frequency range of 1000 kilohertz to 2 hertz, this column, if you see the second column, is polarization. It is basically the orientation of the antenna which is used to measure your electromagnetic radiations. So these are the different orientations, and these are the values which your vehicle should endure. Like, suppose if we are dealing with this particular column, then at in the frequency range of 1000 kilohertz to 800 megahertz, your vehicle should work very much normal under the radiations of 1000 volt per meter. This is one of the examples I have shown here. Like, this is the frequency range of 1200 to 1400 megahertz, and these are the radiations getting emitted, and these are the parameters that you are watching on your engine or your vehicle that should work normally. Okay, so all those parameters, like one of the examples is charge temperature or ambient air temperature. So your ambient air temperature should mean, it should work. This is like sensor, ambient air temperature is basically there is one of the sensors which measures this temperature. So if this temperature, if you see throughout this test, is not exceedingly high or exceedingly low, then that means it's functioning. Your sensor is functioning normal under this frequency range. Right? The last slide is on the test agencies we have available in India specifically for performing these tests. But before I go through that list, I'll show you this the anechoic chamber. So this is basically chamber within which this test is performed, and this is entirely covered by the absorbers, such that the radiation should not go out as well as should not come out. That's how it is protected and the vehicle is tested. These are some of the test agencies: ARAI, ICAT, Intertech, which do perform these tests in India. Okay, so that was all from my side on EMI EMC. I hope I have covered enough to give you a brief idea on what this EMI EMC is. How can you start exploring the standards or the test agencies? So do share your feedbacks on this video and let me know if you want to know any more details on this EMI EMC or any other topic.